Oh, that's a dry. All right. Well, hello, everyone. It's your girl, Gabrielle. Welcome to a brand new episode of Hot Topics. So, let me tell you what this show is about. So, this is the show where we like to have real talk about real things, real things pertaining to family, education, entrepreneurship, physical health, mental health, all that mushy stuff, all in the name of education, as this podcast is a part of my company, A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. My goal is to educate you and to teach you. And today is no different. So I know I say this in every episode that I sorry, guys, I just put some Vicks on. If you're familiar with Vicks, raise your hand. um, but yes, so I am looking forward to this show, and I know I say that in every show that I'm looking forward to it, but I am looking forward to this one because I get to talk about something that I was always curious about, and thank God for the power of Facebook, I managed to find someone and who was willing to talk about it. And now I get the chance to talk about it. What am I talking about? Let me tell you what I'm talking about. So, the topic of today is sorry, I'm hearing a lot of walking around. The topic of today is I adopted my kids. All right, so I get to talk about the adoption process and what's it about and what it entails and all the nitty gritty. So, my guest, she knows she's ready to be on the hot seat. So I'm ready for this. So I adopted my kids. That is the topic for today. And my guest who is going to sit on the hot seat, her name is Sheila Chester. And let me tell you, she's a self acclaimed free spirit. She's the founder of her podcast, Raising Grace Podcast. She's a blog writer. She's a mother of three children. And she spent over a decade dealing with infertility and struggling to build a family with her husband in any way possible. And eventually it led to adoption. So we are going to dive into that. Oh, it just occurred to me. Um, that we got to talk about her podcast. So I think we'll do that a little later. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring her to the stage I'm going to let her tell her story. So let me bring her to the stage right now. Hey, Sheila, how you doing
Hello.
today?
Good. Good.
Awesome, awesome. Oh, I love your background, by the way. You have a guitar,
Mm.
you have those foamy pads on the wall.
Yeah, I'm a musician as well, so that I didn't put that in the intro. That's my free spirit space.
Awesome, awesome. All right. Well, you have an interesting story about the adoption process. I'd love to hear your story and pick your brain about it because I have a lot of questions, and I'm sure people
Mhm.
watching do. So, do you want to just jump right into it, or should I
Yeah, let
start?
me jump right into what led us to deciding to adopt and what led us to decide to adopt in the direction that we went. Because it's not just, oh, let's go adopt. So easy. So
All
my
right.
husband and I, we were younger. Well, I was 26 when we decided we were ready to have kids. And so I was like, for sure, next week I'll be pregnant. And then I planned my whole life from that point forward. But what happened was I didn't get pregnant. And over 2 years, we decided to 26 to 28. Um, I was really struggling emotionally, just physically, trying to force this thing to happen. And 2 years into trying, we decided to go towards fertility treatments. So then we went with there's so many options again for fertility treatments. We both got tested. The man gets tested one time, by the way, which is totally unfair. I got tested like 3,000 different ways, and they still couldn't figure out an answer as to why we couldn't have kids in those first couple of years. But we got to about 4 years of not being able to have kids. I'm 30. He's 37. He thought he would have all of these children and this huge family by now. I felt like a huge disappointment as a woman who couldn't bear children, even though our diagnosis was unexplained infertility. So here's where adoption comes into play. My husband really wanted to do IVF, and I felt I was emotionally unstable, and I didn't feel like I could handle emotionally IVF because it's a huge, they're injecting hormones into your body. It's very stressful. So I thought, oh, adoption will be so much easier. Let's just do that because that's going to be the easy thing to do. Well, I was wrong, but I'd already committed. So we had decided to adopt. And what we had to do first was, what does that even mean? Okay, where do we go to get a baby? I just want to go to the place where they give you the babies. Well, unfortunately, that place doesn't exist. And fortunately, that place doesn't exist. We started by going to a meeting on all about adoption. What does it mean to adopt? And the person in the meeting went over for like 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours, all the different forms of adoption. So there's infant adoption, which generally happens in the United States. You adopt a child at birth or within a couple of weeks of birth. There's international adoption. So you could choose a country that partners with the United States where you can adopt a child internationally. Generally, those children are going to be between the ages of 2 and 10. And then there's the option of foster to adopt. Oftentimes, the goal of foster to adopt is to reunite the children with their biological families, because that is the healthiest thing for that child, is to be with their biological families and to not be taken away. So that was hard for me, to want to be a mother and take on a child, but know that that's the goal for them to be taken away from me because I'm not their biological mother. So we were between international and domestic adoption, and we decided on domestic infant adoption. International adoption, you could meet your child at like 6 months to a year old, or at some point you'd meet your child, you'd have pictures of them, they'd be in an orphanage in a foreign country, you'd have zero control over what's happening over there, and it could take up to 2 or 3 years to bring that child into your home. So that was also scary for me. That's not saying that it's not appropriate for other people to do. It was just not something that I or my husband could handle. So we chose domestic adoption. So then we started going, okay, what agency do we use? So I live in Colorado. Colorado's an agency state. You're required to use an agency to adopt a child. It's actually one of the stricter adoption states in the country, mostly to protect the child and the biological parent, which now seeing that, I'm very glad that we went through this process in Colorado. The ethics are a lot higher than other places in the United States. So we interviewed a couple of agencies and just kind of felt, okay, this is the one. This feels right. We're going to go with this agency. I can't tell you what it felt right. What I don't even know. It was like online dating for finding your child, and I don't like that I'm explaining it that way, but it's such a confusing and interesting field, adoption, you know. So we went with an agency that really promoted open adoption. There's a lot of different types of open adoption, but to them, what open adoption meant was you will have contact with the biological family in some capacity. There's no laws. You're not required to do anything, but this is based on the information in the past, we believe open adoption is the safest and healthiest for adopted children. So we went down that path, all in, down that path on open adoption, and went through classes and paperwork. We had to get fingerprinted multiple times. We had to get AIDS tests. We had to get TB tested. We had to get health evaluations. We had to have one-on-one counseling sessions with the agency to ensure that we were safe to become parents. The whole process made me really angry because I couldn't naturally have kids, And all of my friends in their late 20s are having kids, not having to take classes, not having to prove their worth as a parent, not having to prove that they have the funds to be a parent, not having to prove that their marriage is healthy, they're emotionally stable, which I definitely wasn't at the time, but I played a good game. So it's it was a really emotionally difficult process to go through. And once you get to the next phase, it's another set of paperwork and documentation and approval. And um, it was it was kind of traumatic, honestly, as a person who could not have their own children. But we got through it. And once all of the paper was placed and put into place, we had to take several classes. We had to get hours and hours of parenting classes on how to take care of a infant. And once we got all through that, it's called paper pregnant. You are approved to adopt. We are now going to put you into the pool. To be put in the pool, you have to have a profile book. So my husband and I created I created a profile book for our family where I really wanted an authentic version of ourselves. What do we do? What do we love to do? We're a very active couple. We liked skiing and snowboarding, and we had dogs. And my parents have this ranch. So this is what our life would look like if you placed your child with us. So we were on the adoption list for 3 months, and on Halloween of 2012, we got a call from our agency, and they said, your baby girl was born this morning. Do you want to meet her? And oh my gosh, like, of course. And then they said some other things that I kind of forgot, but the word drug addiction, prenatal care, no prenatal care, not sure how early she is, NICU. All I heard was my baby, and all this other stuff was put in there. And I was like, it doesn't matter. If this was my call, I will take care of this baby in any way possible. So my husband and I run to the hospital. We meet this baby girl who's in the NICU, who's on all these different tubes. She weighs less than 5 pounds, maybe 3 pounds. I'm not really sure. But we got into that hospital room, and we were so excited that we finally had this child that we could call our own. Our life felt like it was on pause, and we're finally able to live the rest of our lives out, live the rest of our future out with our family. So we had this baby girl for about 12 hours. And, we're working with the nursing staff, and they were so helpful, and they were so excited for us because they kind of knew what her story was. And we got a call from the agency that said, hey, the birth mother is considering parenting the baby. Now, keep in mind, this is completely acceptable. It is her child. She gave birth to this baby. She carried this baby. It is her decision to make. But also, that was the most devastating news I could possibly get, and my husband could possibly get. Over the next 12 hours, we met with the birth parents and found that she had basically chosen to place for adoption as a way to extend her time as a parent, because the hospital was threatening to take the baby away from her and put it directly into foster care. So having us come in was kind of a cushion for her to make some decisions, which we didn't know, the adoption agency didn't know, and they didn't ask her. So for whatever reason, she chose to place that child with her grandmother. And by place that child with her grandmother, that child stays in the NICU until she's healthy. And that, who knows how long that could have been. My husband and I were devastated. But that's what adoption is. It's not, oh, this is my baby now. It's not my choice. It's not my decision. I am just offering, like, I am here, and I can't say you have to give me that baby. It's not my choice. My husband and I moved, like, we left that hospital completely broken, but we were finally on the same page in the level of brokenness. The best I can explain it is, it felt like we had had a miscarriage. It felt like we had held this baby that we had built up this whole life for, because it takes an instant to build a life for a child that you have always, always wanted. We held this baby, and together we lost this baby. And he finally saw what my emotional loss was, and we were together in it. And I tell you what, the next day, well, we spent a weekend in the mountains spending all the money that we didn't have. First of all, like building up as much credit card debt as possible, because that's how we deal with our problems. So we got home, and the craziest thing, I had been ordering baby stuff just to kind of prepare. All of the crib and everything had arrived the weekend after this baby situation. So we walk into our house, and there's all this baby furniture sitting right in front of us. And we looked at each other and we said, oh my God, we're going to have a baby. Like, it's going to happen. It almost happened. And we spent the next 24 hours, middle of the night, putting together every piece of baby furniture we had, every baby item that we had collected. The following weekend, I painted a mural in our nursery, and we were ready. We were ready. And yeah, that's adoption. You know what I mean? That's the hardest part of adoption, is never knowing when or how, and the stuff that you have to go through. Now, I called the adoption agency after this happened, and I said, listen, we need some counseling. That was really hard for us. And the adoption agency said to me, or at least made me feel, maybe they didn't say this directly, but they said to me, the birth mother went through more trauma than you did, and you're eventually going to get a baby. So maybe you should just calm down and not worry about this so much. I didn't take that very well. So I had met some other expecting parents, adoptive moms in the classes that I took. I contacted everybody I could contact. And I said, we need to get together. We need to have a powwow. How are we going to support each other? Because the agency is not interested in supporting us. And being in as a fertility, I guess, survivor, is that what we are? You keep that to yourself. You hide that. You are so ashamed by that. So we got a group together, and that was in 2012. We are at 1,000 members. We have a Facebook group of Colorado-only adoptive parents, and how to support each other, because this adoption world is kind of scary. So I told you the sad part. Let me tell you the good part, the fun part-ish. 9 months later, my son was born. We got a call 6 weeks prior to his birth saying, there's been a match. Are you interested? She's looking at your book. And so we looked at the information, and we said, yes, we're interested. And they said, it's a boy, and he's due in May, and she would like to meet you. And we dropped everything. And of course, my husband was out of town on a business trip, because only the important dates, husband. Why? So we had to wait till he came back. And we set up a meeting with this pregnant woman. And we met at a brewery, because she thought that would be funny that we all met at a brewery, and got to know her. And we had a lot of things in common, because I put our book together very authentically. She was like, I love that you ski and snowboard. I love that you have dogs. I love that you hike and you're active. And as she's telling us about her life, she's very active. We're like, yeah, we can click, we can get along. But it's also like, you're seeing this woman who's pregnant, who is making a decision, an impossible decision, to hand you her heart. This being that is growing inside of you, she's giving it to you. And instantly I felt like, I don't deserve this. This beautiful young woman is giving me her child. So while I was dealing with all this excitement, and so excited that I get to be a mother finally, now I get to know the woman on the other side of this baby. And I'm like, shoot, this is going to be a problem, because I don't want to break her heart. But again, that's not my choice to make. I'm the adoptive mom. I'm trying to build a family the best way I know how. She's trying to live her life the best way she knows how. And right now, in this moment, having that child and raising that child did not fit her lifestyle. It did not fit. She didn't have the support at home. She didn't have a biological father that was interested in being a part of this. She was very much alone. And I'm not saying there's a right or wrong way, or you just don't know what somebody's going through. And you can't put yourself in their shoes if you've never been through something like that. So I fell in love with this woman, and she's pregnant with our child in the most stressful time of her life. That's when we get to know each other. Well, she goes into labor about 10 days early and invites us to come to the hospital. The hospital stay could have been better, but you have to realize this is a traumatic situation. So the hospital staff put us up in the same hospital, which this is not how everybody's experience is. She gave birth next door to us. We were in the room next to her because it was empty. And as soon as baby was born, they wheeled him in to our room. And my husband and I, we're in the back of the hospital going like, oh my gosh, what if they actually give us this baby? Like, we're not prepared for this. We don't deserve this. And the nursing staff was so wonderful. They said, hey, mom and dad, it's time for you to come forward and meet your baby. And they let my husband trim the umbilical cord, so he still got that experience. They reminded us that we needed to get our cameras out and take pictures of this baby because we were obviously in a state of shock. Then we got to hold and care for this baby. But the entire time I was feeling love, I was feeling total sadness for this woman. I asked the doctor, I'm like, how is she doing? They're like, she's healthy. She did really good. She's healthy, but she was obviously devastated. Leaving the hospital was really hard because I knew she was leaving with empty arms, and we were leaving with a child that was not biologically ours. And I'll never forget that feeling. I remember when she was in the hospital, I asked her, because I'd heard hospital stays can be pretty difficult for biological mothers. And she said that the hospital staff was really coming down on her and just really being awful to her. And she left the hospital 12 hours after giving birth because she wasn't feeling supported. And she went home to her parents, who were as supportive as they could be considering the circumstances. I mean, how do I explain heartbreak and trauma and excitement and happiness in one experience? But that's what adoption is. And that's how adoption works. And I hate crying, but oh my gosh, this was so traumatic. So I have 2 adopted kids. My daughter's adoption was very similar to my son's, different family, young mother, very little support, couldn't see herself raising a child on her own. And I have basically adopted 2 families. So my children and their biological mothers, who are, I would say, like my sisters, I guess. We don't always agree. We don't have the same lifestyle. I mean, obviously, they're much younger than me. But we have a common goal to raise these kids. And I wouldn't say that we're not co-parenting our children, but we are just making sure these kids grow up knowing where they came from and knowing they can always pick up the phone and call their biological family if they need to. So I'm very passionate about my children's first families and forever families. I mean, we share these children forever. I parent them, they birth them, but I couldn't be where I am today without them. So I know a lot of adoptive families don't have the experience that I have. They don't get to know the biological families. They don't get to be in contact with them as much as I do. I'm also a little bit forceful that way, in that I make sure that we have each other and that we contact each other as often as comfortable. And I know that for the biological parents of my children, it's also really emotional and really difficult to see these kids that they gave to us, to see these kids, and their lives have gotten better, and they're capable now. And, I'm sure they have regrets, because how could you not? How could you not have regrets? It's so difficult. I know a lot of people out there say adoption is this magical, wonderful miracle. And it is. It is a miracle. But it is extremely traumatic. It's traumatic for the biological parents, for life, not just for the day they place their child. It's traumatic for life. It's traumatic for the adoptive parents. We got to adoption through the trauma of infertility. It's traumatic for adoptive kids to have to understand that they were given away at birth, even if it was loving, it was in their best interest. They were given away by the person that's supposed to love them the most. And how do I explain that to them? And their biological parents, how do they explain that to them? And we're doing the absolute best that we can. But no matter what, a child born into adoption will have trauma. It's an automatic. And if you go through your life not telling them that they're adopted, not giving them the truth of their lives, eventually they will find out, because 23andMe and all these DNA options, they will find out they're not biologically yours. It matters. It matters. Where they came from matters. And I think it's important that we give them that opportunity. And even if you don't have access to the biological family of your adopted child, you could say, this is what I know. And obviously age appropriate. This is what I know. My children were born knowing that they were adopted. I created a baby book for each of them with, this is who your birth mother is. This is who your birth father is. Here's their pictures. Here's their birth dates. Here's the important information that you want to know. Here's a picture of them holding you because they love you and you matter to them. And then I show them their first year and how, if we met the birth family, if we didn't meet the birth family. Open adoption is about talking openly about adoption. It's not about co-parenting with a biological parent. It's not even about meeting the biological parent or having communication with the biological parent. Open adoption is openness with your child about their adoption. One thing they told me in the class was, there's going to be a point in parenting where your child will say, you're not my real mom. And my son is 9, and I probably heard it for the first time when he was 4 or 5. And because I was expecting it, I said, no, I am a real mom, though. I'm a real mom. And your birth mom is also a real mom. There's no such thing as a fake mom. What's a fake mom? When we just play that story out, that's something to be expected with adoption, because they're confused. Who's my real mom? And how do you explain to a child that you get 2 real moms? Not everybody gets 2 real moms. You get 2 real moms, 2 mothers that love you to pieces and want to squeeze you. And that's been interesting. It's been a challenge. I have 3 children. So my third was through IVF. I'd chosen not to do IVF in the beginning. After we adopted the 2, I felt I was emotionally stable enough. My husband was barely emotionally stable enough. But I was like, if you're going to try it, let's just try it. So we ended up with a full genetic child as well, which, if I wanted an easy life in raising children, I chose the least easy route possible. But my daughter, my middle child, says, she's like, I'm just so sad for our youngest, who's fully genetic. She's like, she only has 1 mom, and it's just you. Thanks, honey. I'm glad that she sees adoption that way. She has 2 women that love her so, so much. Now, in this adoption process, we also have siblings. My daughter has 2 sisters. on her birth mother's side and one sister on her birth father's side. And so her birth mother and I have made it very clear that we want the sisters to have a really solid relationship. We are so lucky they live only like 2.5 hours from us. And we get together a couple times a year so the sisters can really just get together. And the last time we got together, my daughter said to her older sister, she said, "Isn't it so great that we can be best friends and sisters?" And I just looked at her birth mom and we just smiled and we like tears, like, oh, we're doing it. It's working. But ultimately, what's that going to look like when they're adults? Does it prevent some of the trauma? Maybe. Maybe they don't have to work it out as much as if they're adults. But yeah, so if you were planning on adopting and we're hoping for the magical unicorn story, this is the best I can offer you. This is what real adoption looks like. It's working hard to make sure your kids are okay with their story because it's their truth. And it's important to tell our kids their truth, right? Gabrielle, do you have any questions for me? I feel like I really dove in there emotionally, and now I'm going to need some like calm down time.
Well, listen, I wanted to give you your space, so but thank you so much for sharing your story, and you definitely went through a lot with with your journey. Um, One thing that came to mind as you were talking is in the beginning, there's the desire to have kids, right? So, your husband wanted it, you wanted it, your husband wanted to do it the natural way, and for whatever reason, it's difficult for you biologically. So, um, I guess how did you manage to keep the marriage so strong? Because I know in journeys like this, it may lead to divorce, it may lead
Mm,
to separation, neglect. I don't know if you're comfortable touching on this,
absolutely.
but how did you keep how did you keep it together?
In all honesty, Gabrielle, we were on the cusp of divorce. I will not lie to you. Before we had chosen, because we were at a standstill, I said no IVF, said yes IVF. I said, I can't continue doing this. We were arguing constantly about a what if possibility. We ended up ultimately, the fact of the matter is, we're not quitters, okay? We knew that we wanted the same things. Our life path was the same. This was just the middle ground that we couldn't agree on. We went to therapy. We went on this amazing honeymoon vacation, not honeymoon, anniversary trip. We went to Santa Fe and to the Grand Canyon, and just it was like this was the trip to decide, are we going to go with adoption or parenting in some way, shape, or form, or are we going to go our separate ways? And I will never forget that vacation because I remember on the way home, we were both crying and we're like, we have to do this. Like, this is our path. And I can see easily how people will give up on their marriages because of this, because it is so difficult. And to even being on the cusp of divorce before going through IVF, I said, listen, you think I'm crazy now. Like, you wait till I get some hormones, extra hormones in my body. I will lose my mind. But I feel like going through the adoption process together put us on an even playing field emotionally. And ultimately, we really wanted the same things. And we sought counseling and made it work. And honestly, we've had to do counseling ever since. I was like, oh, this is how marriages work, period. You actually have to work on them and go to counseling. So to this day, we go to counseling for that.
So it sounds like it's like you are approaching the edge of the cliff, but it was sort of like, we're not ready to jump off the cliff just yet. We want the same things. Let's keep going. We made it this far, we might as well keep going.
Exactly. Exactly. And also, divorce doesn't get you children. And if that's what we wanted, so we get a divorce, and then what? How do we have kids now? How do I go? Am I going to go adopt by myself? Like, that wasn't going to work for me. I was going to divorce him because he wouldn't choose my option. That's kind of childish of me. So yeah, we just really had to sit down and really, really work on our relationship.
I mean, to push back against that, I think the idea is if how do I phrase it? That if it didn't work with your husband, there was always
Right.
another person. You could always start another family.
Right, but then you'd have to train another husband, and I don't know if any married people out there have experienced this, but it takes a lot to train the husband that you want. Like, I put a lot of work into that man, and I didn't wanna restart either, and, who's to say I couldn't have kids with him? I'm not gonna be able to. Is it my infertility? Is it his infertility? And who's to say I'm gonna get pregnant with the next person and then have to deal with the exact same argument with that person? So is it that we are incompatible as two people, or is it that the issue that we're dealing with is that what's the problem? And for us, that was the issue. It wasn't each other.
Mm. So, I mean, that brings up a fair point. You don't know what's going to happen with the next person.
Right. You
Like,
could just be entering into this whole process again.
right. And it's like you might as well just make it work with the one person since it's easier.
I mean, it doesn't, that's not the same for, I know plenty of
Yeah.
families that have gotten divorced over infertility. That is, I don't want to make it like an easy fix. It wasn't an easy fix for
Yeah.
us. It was
Yeah.
just, it was conscious choice that we made.
Of course. Of course. So now, I mean, there's a lot we didn't touch on. Now I got to think of my next question. All right. So you started off as a foster parent first and then adoption? Or
No,
you go straight okay.
ours was straight adoption. So the biological parent chooses adoption, and then they generally speaking, in Colorado at least, they're required to go a certain amount of counseling. The more counseling a biological parent goes through prior to giving birth, the better. You want this person to be in as much counseling as possible. And post birth, you want them to be in as much counseling as possible. They just went through one of the most painful experiences in their life. Um, so they chose that route. Foster would be the state chose the route for them. So, like, they were on, maybe they tested positive for drugs while pregnant. That's when the foster system would step in and take that child from them and place them with us. So, the foster system, you would have a child between, 1 week and 2 years while that parent proves that they are capable of parenting their child, which is also a shitty system, but
So you had to go through all these things for 2 years before you can even adopt a child.
no. So with the foster system, you have to do the exact same thing as an adoptive parent. So we were certified as foster parents, but we wanted to do straight domestic adoption. We didn't want to go into the foster system. My fear was a child was going to be taken from me, um, which a lot of mothers fear. But in the foster system, that's what it is. You foster this child until they're ready to go back to their, or till the parents are ready to take them back. I wasn't emotionally available for that for that amount of trauma, even though I will say foster parents are amazing human beings. They have to know how to deal with that sadness because um, every foster parent knows that a child is going to be going back with their parents, their biological parents, and they accept the sadness that they're going to experience, the heartbreak that they're going to experience every time a child goes back to their biological family.
Right, like the and getting a child just for the child to be taken away again.
Right.
You couldn't deal with that again. And
No, it's very traumatic. And there are some really great stories where biological families do get everything back together. They do get sober, um they do get healthy, and they raise wonderful children where the program does work. And then there's more stories than that on where it doesn't work and the child's going back and forth between foster and family, and then a new foster, and then back to family, and then another new foster, and then back to family. And it's so traumatic to think about that and watch that. And you know, God, what's the solution in this country for children?
Mm. So, did it cost you anything? How much did this whole
Oh
thing
yeah,
cost?
didn't even talk about cost. My heart was so exploding with love and trauma that I couldn't talk about money. Oh my gosh. By the way, you do have to have money to adopt. There's no, yeah, it's so expensive. It is so expensive. Foster to adopt is not expensive. It is not free. It costs about, last I checked, in Colorado, it's like $2,500 to get certified to become a foster parent. Um, for me, every adoption agency charges something different, which is really helpful. So great. Um, I would say when I adopted 10 years ago, I was quoted around between 15,000 and 50,000, depending on the agency, depending on where the child was born, if we had to fly them back to Colorado. Um, Both of my children were born in Colorado, and the all the cost, which is so frustrating. This is the ethical dilemma, right, of adoption. Like, you're buying children. And I like to think that I'm not purchasing children, because that is illegal and horrible and unethical. But that's what it feels like. You're paying for the social work. You're paying for the biological mother's counseling, and even biological mothers that don't place their children get counseling in these adoption agencies, and counseling on, if you parented, how would that look? If you did this, how would that look? What resources do you need? At least that's what they're supposed to be doing. Just paying social workers, paying fees to market. They're marketing. Place your baby for adoption here, which I don't, it gives me the yuckies, but also it's a concept. And for the biological parents that my children were born from, it is what they needed. So I can't be too angry about that. I made sure that they got their counseling. I made sure post they got their counseling, which they didn't. Both of them kind of dropped off the map, and because they didn't know how to handle the trauma that they just went through. I know a woman that paid over 70,000 for one child. She was taken for a ride. I mean, it's so easy. You get so emotionally invested in having a family. Like, you never thought you'd have a family. You just want a family. Just, how do I get this? How do I know this works for me? And I know this child is I know that birth mother. I know, I've met this person, and it just goes on and on and on. And well, just 10,000 more, just 10,000 more, just 10,000 more. And there are so many adoption scams out there. And how do you know which one's which? And for me, I'm just grateful. I live in Colorado, and they require an agency. Some lawyers are really great. Some are terrible. Colorado bans consult. What is it? Eight. There's like this consult. Well, they'll find an agency for you. So Colorado bans that, because that is just gathering more money. Though they do help you find available children here and there. Man, I love hate the adoption situation, Gabrielle. Love hate it. It's
Mhm.
to have to pay to become a mother. And then you look at the situation too, like, had those birth mothers, had they gotten the $30,000 or whatever that I had to pay to facilitate the adoption, would they have been able to parent? And that hits me uncomfortably a lot. Like, so because we have money, we get their children and they don't. That's a society thing, right? And then you look at families who are going through infertility that don't have money. What options do they have? They don't have any options. And if you're facing an unplanned pregnancy and you don't have money and you don't have support, the government's like, sorry, here are your options. And now they're taking away those options too. So you're getting very few options available to you. Um, in a perfect world, every child would have a parent that wanted them in the first place. Every family who wanted children could have them. And every woman that got pregnant wanted to be pregnant in the first place. But we don't live in a perfect world. So,
No, we don't. No, we don't. And you bring up an interesting point about um I don't want to say financial bias, but it is a privilege, it
it's
is
a privilege.
financial privilege
Mhm.
to go through an adoption agency, to pay all that money to, support the adoptive parents, to get the child for counseling
Yeah.
and um even fostering. You don't wait, do you pay for fostering or do they pay you? I think you
Uh,
pay for
it
fostering.
depends on the situation.
Yeah.
Fostering, you have to pay to get certified, and then you could, uh, each child comes with, I believe, some funds, but that's just for that child. I mean, it's to feed that child and clothe that child. It's not like you're getting paid to house children. You're not getting rich becoming a foster parent. So if you can push that bias aside.
Right, right. So to have a a permanent child, right? A child
Mhm.
that's permanently placed with
That is
you.
placed with you. We
Mhm.
went to court. The judge said, "This child is now yours. This child now has your last name." Um, yeah, that's what it takes.
And the fact that you could afford to do all that,
Yeah.
and IBF too. That's
Yeah.
also
We are a super privileged white family in middle America. I'm very well aware.
oh man, so you started off with I I IVF and then you
No, I
gave up.
never did IVF
Oh,
until
you
the
never
very
did. Right, right.
no. So here I started with like IUI, so insemination, right? So they'll
Mm.
take the sperm and insert it into me at the certain time, and then you still got to take some hormones. I think we did that 6 times. That didn't work. Still didn't know what we had. After we adopted our son, we did another couple of rounds of IUI. I did a bunch of more blood tests, and they found out that I have a disorder called balanced. Oh, geez, wow, I don't even remember what it's called.
Mm.
It's like balanced chromosomes or something. So my chromosome 3 and 4 are flipped. So only a certain percentage of my eggs are capable of supporting life. So the only way I would be able to get pregnant is through IVF. So I told my husband I still don't want to do IVF. I think that's still a low percentage for us. They gave us like a 20% chance, which apparently to him was really great. And I was like, no. We actually tried embryo adoption because I was like, well, if my son's adopted, let's get other adopted. Like, let's just make this a theme in our family. So there's not one that's adopted and one that's not. And so I tried embryo adoption, which is like IVF, except they don't pull the eggs from me. So these are embryos that are left over from somebody else's IVF experience. They had all the children they wanted, and they have these frozen embryos that they didn't want to discard or donate to science. So they're donating them to another family. So that did cost us money too, to try to do embryo adoption. I did it 3 times where we implanted embryos into my uterus. Didn't work 3 times. So I went through the adoption process again to get our daughter. And then after that, I said, because I like to be in pain and suffering, I was like, let's just do IVF once. And so we did. We did it 1 time. We got through the whole process. We got one embryo that was genetically tested and healthy. So we together could only create one healthy embryo, which encourages me that yeah, we can't we can't have kids naturally. That's never going to happen. And she is now 3 years old. She was on ice for 9 months in a little frozen bucket somewhere. I don't know what they do. But yeah, I went through a pregnancy. I got to experience labor. I got to experience a C-section. And wow, wow. Now I've experienced it all. We don't have any money, and we're just trying to get through life.
Oh man. Have you thought about surrogacy?
I did, but the issue is surrogacy is more expensive. It's about 50,000 to 80,000 to have a surrogate. I had a friend that was a surrogate, and she made like $10,000 to be a surrogate, and then the person paid her or paid the surrogate agency like 50 to 80,000, some ridiculous amount of money. So even friends had offered to be surrogates, and I said, it's not my uterus that's the problem, it's the eggs. So even if I created eggs, they wouldn't work, or embryos, they wouldn't work in your uterus because it's the eggs that are the problem. So I said, I can carry, I just can't create. Um, so that was our biggest issue.
Mm. So I'll wrap it up with this question. Would do you see yourself having more children at this point?
Oh my God, no. What a nightmare. Why would you say that? I have a 3-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 9-year-old. They are giving me a run for my sanity. I love the crap out of every one of them. They are so unique and fabulous. And oh my gosh, I love them. I don't think I have the mental capacity for one more. I did get a puppy last year thinking, well, if I get one every 3 years, then maybe this puppy will help. And that just squalmed. I'm like, yeah, puppy, that's big enough. I'm good. No, we are living the best life. I'm literally living the life that I'd always dreamed of. And every time I'm having like a panic attack, a mom panic attack where my kids don't appreciate me, or me and my husband are like, why is the house a disaster? We're like, because we prayed for this. This is everything we wanted. So we're living the dream. So yeah, parenting, man, it's so hard. It is so hard. And I'm so glad that infertility is behind us. But this is a new stage of wow. Every year is something brand new. And I have a 9-year-old boy, a 6-year-old girl, and a 3-year-old girl. And my 3-year-old, whew, she is spicy. She's a spicy one. So that we weren't given any easy kids. We were giving amazing kids. But yeah, three's plenty.
So you're all right. So you're done. You're finished. No more adoption.
No.
No more.
Mm-mm.
Okay, you are
Game
done.
over. The game is over.
All right. And we didn't even talk about in a cross-racial
Yeah, that
adoption.
is that. I could even recommend other people to talk about that. That's not really a place for me to talk about. Our agency didn't recommend adopting cross racially if we didn't live in a multicultural community, which we don't. We didn't want to live downtown. We we don't have a lot of multicultural friends, although we're trying to build them, but also I don't want to chase after like black people and be like, hey, I don't have any black friends. Will you be my friend? Because that's awkward. So we just kind of knew who our families were. I'm from a small town in South Dakota, and there's no culture, there's no multiracial there. My husband's from Colorado Springs. There's not a lot of multicultural there. So we just kind of knew what it took to raise a child of a different race than us. And it took immersing ourselves in that culture. And were we willing to do that? Yes, we're willing to do that, but it would be above and beyond. And quite frankly, adoption is really hard. And if you want to go above and beyond, you should do that. And I know many people that do that. But we chose not to go that route. There's a lot of adoptees that have thoughts and feelings. They're very open about what it was like being raised in a biracial, multiracial family. And we had to watch some pretty angry videos. And so we were like, nope, we don't want our kids to hate us when they grow up. So, and that's not what happens to everybody, but we just felt like that's not our wheelhouse.
Right. And did you say you tried international adoption?
We thought about it, but it was too expensive. And also, like, we were looking at Russia, and Russia gets mad at the United States about every 3 minutes, and the first thing they do is shut down the adoption program. So you could be in the middle of an adoption, know your child, have met your child, and just waiting for paperwork to go through, and they shut down adoptions, and then you don't get that child anymore.
Mm. So so sticking to Colorado,
Yeah.
it was it was it was a matter of convenience. It sounds like.
I would say convenience and cost. I mean, we still went with the less expensive route, if you can imagine. The least expensive route is foster to adopt. There are also agencies that offer. Okay, they're not cars. You don't just buy them. There are agencies that work with kids that have parents that have terminated their rights. So these kids are free for adoption, as in there's no extra paperwork you have to go through. You don't have to wait for the parents to sign off their parental rights. The child is ready for adoption that day. Um, and so there's plenty of websites where you can find children that need to be adopted ASAP or are ready for adoption. And a lot of those kids are older. And yeah. So if you have a heart for adoption, please adopt the ones that are ready to go. There's a line. Here's the thing with infant adoption. There's a line out the door of families that are willing to pay the money it costs to adopt an infant because everybody wants to hold that baby in their arms. Okay. That was me. I wanted the baby in my arms. But the truth of the matter is there's a ton of kids out there that need families and they're ready to go to their families today. And, you know, no adopted kid comes without trauma. Not one. Doesn't matter how early you adopt them. They're all going to have some traumatic issue that you wouldn't have expected. So, but yeah, for me, it was, I wanted that baby in my arms. And yeah, that was very selfish of me. Very selfish of me. But that's where we landed.
You wanted the experience of
Hmm. Raising that baby. Yep.
raising a baby, right?
Yeah.
And and potty training and with the
Right.
bottles and the
All of those
crying and
really
all, yeah.
magical things that I'm like, why did I want that so bad? But yeah, like I feel like that's our natural instinct as human beings. You know, for me, I always wanted children. And I met people that are like, oh, I just never wanted kids. I'm like, how do I get that? Like, can you give that feeling to me so that I don't want kids, so that this isn't gonna ruin my marriage and ruin my life, that I have to spend all this money to have children, and which again, you don't. You can do foster care, which is much less expensive. And those kids definitely need families that are willing to love them regardless of where they go in the next 6 months.
So, did you feel any pressure from your family um to have kids, or your pressure from your parents or your mother-in-law, father-in-law? Was there any
Honestly,
cultural pressure?
not nearly as much as a lot of my friends have experienced. Yeah, sure. Like the first couple of years, they're like, "We'd like to have grandkids," and then once we started and they knew the situation, they shut up. They shut up about it because they don't want to get into the middle of that. But it was hard. It was definitely hard for them to watch us go through infertility. And I was very open. I'm a pretty open book. I don't know if you noticed, but
I noticed.
I tell my story quite a bit, and it's my story. It's not my kids' story. I'm not going to tell their story. I'm going to tell mine. And so, me and my folks talked quite a bit, and there were still some issues that came up that were fully due to what we were going through that they couldn't totally understand.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so we're gonna wrap things up now. All right. I like to ask my guests to share any words of wisdom. So, do you have any words of wisdom that you like to share with our
Absolutely.
audience?
Yeah, if you are interested in adoption and you think it's this most beautiful, wonderful thing, please do your research. Please do your research. Here's a website that I can recommend to you, growbeyondwords.com. Some of the best adoption resources you're going to find. The woman that runs that is an adult adoptee. She has adopted children, and she is a psychotherapist and works predominantly with adoption. So she has some of the best resources you could find. Don't just jump into an agency. Don't just call a lawyer. Don't just put your name out there on a website. Really do the work. The more work you do up front, the better it's going to be for your family in the long run. So those are my words of wisdom. If you're going to adopt, do the research up front.
Beautiful. And I'm just going to put that. What is? I'm just gonna put that banner up here. There we go. Sheila Chester
Yes.
recommend. Oh, I spelled recommends wrong. Okay. I'll recommend. Whoopsie.
And you're a tutor. Come on,
I know. I know.
Gabrielle.
It's early in the morning. Okay, there it is. Sheila Chester recommends
Hmm.
growbeyondwords.com. There we go. So I'm just gonna put that up there for our viewers. All right, great. All right, well, Sheila, thank you so much for coming on Hot Topics, and thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for letting me come on. I'm sorry I talk so much, but
Not
and please have your listeners go to my podcast. I interview moms all over, or moms and dads all over the country, different types of um, people who work with kids on how to better raise our kids. So all sorts of ideas, and everybody does it differently. But guess what? We all love our kids. The goal is the same.
beautiful. And, while you're talking about your podcast, let's talk about your podcast. So you have a podcast called Raising Grace Podcast.
Yep.
That's the name of it. And for my viewers, for my listeners, you can find it wherever you get your podcasts. So whether it is Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Deezer or iHeartRadio or
Mhm.
Good Pods, wherever you get your podcasts, check it out. It is called Raising Grace Podcast. It is Sheila's podcast, and all the things that she talked about today, you can listen to multiple episodes about it on her podcast. So check
Mhm.
it out right there. Of course, the link to it will be provided in the description, but we just want to put just make I just want to make you guys aware that it is out there. It is
Mhm.
called Raising Grace Podcast. So check it out wherever you get your podcast.
Thank you
And
so much.
and while we're promoting, so she doesn't have a lot of accounts, but you could easily find her, right? So she's on the web. You could go to her website. It is www.sheilakchester.com. She is also on Facebook and Instagram. The account is Raising Grace Podcast. Simply put,
Yeah.
right? So if you want to learn more about her, learn more about the adoption process, if you want to learn more about the podcast, check her out, you guys. The website again is www.sheilakchester.com. She's also on Facebook and Instagram. The account name is Raising Grace Podcast. Excuse me. It is the same account name for both Facebook and Instagram. So I want you guys to check it out. I want you to follow. I want you to subscribe and learn everything there is about her. Um, Sheila, do you want to tell us about your business, your services?
Is it a business if you don't get paid doing it?
Well, you want
My
people to.
hobby of interviewing other parents is a lot of fun. No, on my website you'll also see that I do some social media advertising. I work for nonprofits in small churches in the Colorado area, or anywhere really. So small churches is a small church, but yeah, I just do media for them and marketing for them. But no, this my podcast is my passion project, and someday it'll get me to something. I'd love to speak and do engagements and just educate people about adoption and what it means to be a mother of an adopted child.
All right, there you go. So, you guys, if you want to just learn more about her, learn more about her podcast, everything is right in front of you, you guys. So once again, the website is www.sheilakchester.com. She's also on Facebook and Instagram with the account name Raising Grace Podcast. So check it out, you guys, and follow her as well. And one last time, check out her podcast. It is called Raising Grace Podcast. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts. All right, you guys. That's it. So Sheila, thank you again for joining me on Hot Topics.
Thanks, Gabrielle. I appreciate it.
Awesome. All right, you guys. That was very enlightening. And I hope you guys enjoyed the episode today. I definitely learned a lot. I hope you guys learned a lot as well. So I'm glad that we got to dive into that. But of course, we got to get into the nitty gritty of it all. So, as a reminder, this podcast is a production of my company, A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. So, if you are a parent and you have a child that needs homework help, academic assistance, maybe they're falling behind in school and you need them to catch up, maybe they're behind on some reading levels, maybe they're just not doing their homework no matter how hard you yell at them, it is not working. Something is not registering in their brain. Reach out to us. We can help. I will give you our information. It is scrolling below at the bottom of the screen if you are watching this on video, but I will tell you this anyway. Our website is www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. You can also send us an email at success at a step ahead tutoringservices.com. You could also call or text us. I will say texting is preferred, but you can call or text us at 347 762 2838. You can also find us on our multiple social media platforms. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Eventbrite, WhatsApp, and I think I'm missing one. I don't know. I feel like I'm missing one, but we are on multiple platforms on social media. So I encourage you to find us on social media and follow us. Just type in a step ahead tutoring services in the search bar. We will pop up. Look for the icon pencil with the gray and black tip. That is us. So I encourage you to find us on social media, follow us, subscribe, stick it out with us. So stay in touch with us if you are looking for our services. So again, if you are looking for tutoring, your child needs homework help, test prep, college counseling, editing and proofreading, time management skills, study skills, and it's not just kids either. So maybe you as a parent need some academic help as well because we also work with adults. Please reach out to us. Again, the website is www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. And I just want to make this one last note. I know we're a little over time, but I just want to make this one last note. Let me know what you thought about this episode by dropping a comment in the comment section below or in the comment thread, or drop a rating somewhere. you know let let me know your thoughts. It definitely helps our algorithm. It helps people find us. When you tell people about us, people find us, right? So help us help you help us. Drop a comment in the comment section or in the comment thread. Let me know what you thought about this episode today, or drop a rating, drop a note, just drop something. Let me know what you thought about this episode today, you guys. It helps us. Thank you. Whew. All right. Let me gather my bearings. So thank you again for watching yet another episode of Hot Topics. If this was your first episode, welcome. I hope you enjoyed it. If you are returning to Hot Topics, thank you for coming back. Thank you guys again for your support. I look forward to seeing you at the next episode. Thank you guys again. And now I am signing off. Bye, guys.